Creating an enemy from within, enemy property legislation in India. It was an attempt by a father to have his daughter close to him even after her marriage, something that would enable her to have continued ties with the city he called home. The father was Justice X and one of the most esteemed judges at the Allahabad High Court, and it was in 1944 that he divided his property on the road named after him, with one share of it given to his daughter Y. I'm using X and Y because probably these cases are still alive and these are not dead people. These buildings exist, their relatives exist, so it's an ethical position. He did not know how her marriage in 1948 to someone on the other side of the border would not only inhibit her movement back home, but also, in the face of war, would make her an enemy. The question here is not just of the building named after him being embroiled in the enemy property laws, but a woman being termed as enemy just because she was married on the other side of border in Pakistan. Whom does she become an enemy of? An enemy of the state? An enemy of the people? To understand this, one needs to delve into the trajectory of the logics that it has over the years been deriving its rationale from. It was in the First World War that for the first time, statutory law was passed in the Parliament of United Kingdom to eschew adherence to the king's enemies and avoid aiding and comforting the enemy until once more the gentle speech of peace supplanted the harsh boisterous tongue of war, while the Trading with Enemy Act 1914 as amended in the year 1915 and 1916. Enemy nationality does not become a category for the definition of enemy in this war. The focus is on firms so that to inhibit the gains of enemy nations, one needs to remember that it is in and through this law that for the first time warring factions not just become a belligerent of the sovereign, but also become the belligerent of the people that the sovereign governs. The Office of Custodian of Enemy Property first came into existence under this Act in 1915 in India. It is in the Second World War that the Act expands its domain in accordance with the notification issued under the same. Private properties of enemy nationals not residing in India for the time being became included in this Act. Hence, there is inclusion of enemy subjects and private property within the definition of this Act. With partition, property included more than accounts, securities, monies, and firms. Land became the primary modality within the evacuee property legislation, which was, though not technically a wartime act, but it used many principles of the same. The firms and properties that came within the purview of these acts were in most cases liquidated, and the sale was the end they met, sometimes in the name of treaties or pacts, and sometimes in the name of rehabilitation. The Enemy Property Act came into being to enable the custody of these properties so declared by the central government in the light of 1962 war with China and 1965 war with Pakistan, to ensure defense of India and to prevent any benefit to the above warring nations. Here, enemy is defined as any person belonging to a country committing such aggression. Ambiguity is built into the abstract legal category of enemy by using words like belonging, which are nowhere defined in the law. Here, I would state it's not just the Pakistani nationals which have been affected by the Act, it's also the Chinese nationals which have been affected, but there is a disproportionate effect on the so-called Pakistani nationals, which I will try to prove are not just Pakistani nationals, but Indian Muslims. Interesting parallels can be drawn between evacuee property and enemy property legislations. Both acts disproportionately affect Indian Muslims. Yet, while in the case of former, rehabilitation and settlement of displaced Hindus was the driving logic after vesting, in the latter, the logic for vesting has been affected by gains or faida as it is commonly known. It is not just the disposition and stripping of Indian Muslims of their capital as Umar has argued, but it is also to appropriate land and make it available to the economically more powerful. A snippet into M. Khan's life drives this point home. No one could with certainty state that M. Khan had migrated to Pakistan. He belonged to a landed family on the edges of a prominent city in UP in an area known as jail. In the absence of clear trace of his movements, the custodian's office will create paper truths to deem him as the enemy by appropriating ambiguity into certainty. The district police's report states the ambiguity that nothing can be said with certainty about the movement of M. Khan. The year is 2017. This in turn gets appropriated in the final report, which states that M. Khan had gone to East Pakistan and then from there to West Pakistan, and that he came back to India 30 or 35 years ago in 1980s. His return is accepted to invalidate the power of attorney that his relative A. Khan possessed. As M's stay in Pakistan would make him a Pakistani national, taking away all his rights over property. These words are in sync not with the facts of the LIU report, but with the words of the complaint filed. Uncertainty is appropriated to become paper truths, to borrow Tarot's term, to enable sequestration by any means. The minority is conveniently and easily labeled as suspicious. Hence, it seems pertinent to ask, what were the purposes these properties were being used for all of these years, that it became necessary for them to be deemed as enemy property? If they were benefiting Pakistan, then how? Who were the people who had occupied these spaces, and how did they manage to do the above? The irony is that these questions do not even arise. They do not become a modality for the classification. What then was the modality for their expropriation? The law states a property can be vested if, in the opinion of central government or state government, it is necessary or expedient so to do for securing the defense of India, civil defense, public safety, maintenance of public order, or efficient conduct of military operations, or for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life of community, that government may by order in writing requisition any immovable property. Yet, nowhere ever is there a mention of any of the above points in any of the cases in the custodian's office. Rather, there seems to be an economic logic that drives these cases, as these lands are leased on yearly basis for urban property and on 3-yearly basis on an average for agricultural land, because it's assumed that agricultural land takes more time to reap the benefits. The poorer farmers who had purchased parts of M's properties from his relatives would not be able to pay again the lease amount. The Act in its functioning then makes wealth accumulation possible by the rich. With the 2018 rules, the sale of these lands has been set in motion, making the logic of expropriation to benefit economically powerful become even more clear, as those who could not even pay the lease would not even fathom to paying the prices again. It is here, I would add, that right to property has a tenuous and complicated history before and after 1947. The right to property has never been absolute. Once a fundamental right after 47, it was relegated to a constitutional right in 1978. Reforms and public interests have been the logic behind this shift. Acts such as this one benefit drastically from this shift. What makes this act stand out is its unabashed focus on marginalizing the Muslim minority. The zooming into ordinary lives of these individuals reveals the absurdity of the abstract category of an enemy, and not just of the bureaucratic functioning. On the question of representativeness of these cases, they are not an anomaly, but unfortunately a norm. Thus, the microhistorical perspective helps us unravel the actualities of the larger notions that are otherwise commonsensically meaningful. While this is true, the third case also reveals the limits to which reconstruction of human voices is possible in and through the legal cases. The next case is about Shehzadi K, who inherited 1/8 of the property after the death of her second husband. The remaining share went to their daughter, CB. She had two daughters. She had two other daughters from her first marriage. One of them died and the other one had migrated to Pakistan. Shehzadi K in 1965 went to visit Pakistan. Shehzadi K in 1965 went to Pakistan to visit her daughter and passed away on her return journey. This narrative is recovered from the petition that the applicant, who happens to be her relative, files in the civil court dated 1981. The same applicant then, within 8 years in 1989, completely denies the existence of Shehzadi K's first marriage and her children from it, stating that CB was the sole owner after the death of her mother. In the statist understanding, she did exist as the owner of the entire property since the death of CB in 1947, and the whole property devolving into her. Is it clear? It's a bit complicated here. It also fails to recognize the rights of the applicant, claiming that Shehzadi K and her children, were Pakistani nationals. So, what the state does is negate one line of lineage while accepting the other line of lineage, while what the applicant does is accept the other line of lineage and negate the first. One can then ask, did she really exist? Which version of the paper truths are really true? In addition to questions like, does dying on enemy foreign soil make you an enemy? Do you have the right to visit your children in an enemy nation? What is that the various truths about her that conjured up in the files? What only means to appropriate land by both the parties? A closer look into this case. The closer one looks into this case, the more one realizes that there is no linear trajectory in the way these cases unfold. Different stakeholders, based on their positions, in turn construct and reconstruct the lives of individuals. The partial reconstructions of their lives are not without contradictions. What probably such an approach could show is that family associations' lineage is often denied or constructed to suit the economic ends. It is not in not being able to present a harmonious whole, the paper has made an attempt to look at the tensions that microhistorical methods have thrown up productively to reveal the varied paper lives, revealing partial insights into lives, are in this case constructed to lay claim on property. The economic logic in the above scenarios becomes more than glaring. In and through the functioning of the Enemy Property Act 1968, it makes the Indian Muslims vulnerable. We need to pause and ask the questions. Who exactly are included in we the people, in the idea of India, when we say us, when we say we fought against Pakistan, when we say we fought against China? Anyone with a family member who had migrated to these enemy nations can have his or her property be appropriated by the Act. Personal feuds and enmities end up dredging up of movements of relatives. Was it not enough that families were separated, that now, even now, one is forced to sever even the memories of their loss?